Okay, it's 1 o'clock on my watch, so I think we'll make a start. Our chair, Simon, who you can see, is having a few issues with his connection. So I'll fill in and do a few quick intro slides. So welcome everyone. This is the EPD for Manufacturers and Suppliers webinar, a fifth in a series. We're co-hosting this one with the Irish Green Building Council, and it's part of World Green Building Week. So we've got a really great program today. Our in-house expert, Jane Anderson, one of our board members who has chaired a number of our previous webinars. We've got Niall Crossan from Ecological Building Systems, Kevin Underwood from the British Woodworking Federation, and Tobias Brinkmann from Brands and Values. Just a few quick instructions. So we are recording. If you don't want to be included on the recording, please just keep your audio or video off. We're using the chat function to ask questions. You can be adding these throughout the webinar. Just type them in. We'll keep an eye on these, and we can ask a few quick ones after each presentation, and we'll have 20 minutes for Q&A at the end. If you'd like us to ask it on your behalf, just write it in the chat and add "ask for me." Keep your audio muted when the presentations are going on, but feel free to turn it on during the Q&A, and we can have a good discussion. Any technical problems, just write to me or Simon in chat and let me know. Looks like Will is having a few issues with sound. Is everybody else hearing me okay? Okay, Will, I think it might just be you this time. So yes, this is the fifth event in a series. We've been looking at embodied carbon, different design tools, life cycle analysis. We've had an introductory webinar for EPD and one with CIBC on building services. So these are all recorded. You can see these in our resources section on our website. And we've also got 3 really useful briefing papers on EPD authored by Jane, an intro, how to use and where to find them. Again, these are in our resources section. This is another event in the series. In 2 weeks' time, we can get Lca and Benchmarking. So we've got 2 real experts. You'll know, I'm sure many of you will know Simon Sturgis from Targeting Zero. We've also got Mirko Farnatani from Hilson Moran. And this is us. I'm sure many of you know us already, ASBP. So we're a membership organisation, non-profit, mission-led, and that's our mission. And we do lots of events, most of them online at the moment, but we also do research projects across these sort of 3 themes. We can get, this sort of falls under the product sustainability side of things, but we also look at material reuse, natural materials, indoor air quality, things like that. This is our ever-growing membership, 70+ members, real across the sector, architects, product manufacturers, specifiers, academia. Another event coming up, this is in 3 weeks' time. So this is with Green Register, part of the Nature Plus event series. So Nature Plus are a European eco label, of which ASBP is the UK representative for. So there's a series of events across 10 days with events in Germany, Belgium, Italy, I think. So we can send you all the information about them. Some really interesting events. But this is our event, and we've got keynote Professor Stephen Holgate, who was a a keynote at our Healthy Buildings conference a few years ago. So he's speaking again. He wrote some really interesting reports, Every Breath We Take. They're all available in our resources section. So we've got some other really interesting speakers, John Palmer, Passive House Trust, Rachel Marsh, who's a public health physician. So please join us for that. Another event series, so this is with our Plastics in Construction group. We've got a Dragon's Den series, or Dragon's Eco Den. We've had 2 of these so far, one on insulation, and we just had one last week on packaging. So this was our first winner, Biome, a mycelium product. And we've got 3 more events coming up. Next up is building services, and then one on flooring, finishes and paints, and one on building elements. So if you would like to take part, please get in touch, or if you'd like to just attend, we've had some really good attendances. Please register online. These are free to attend. This is also in collaboration with our plastics group. This is an introductory guide authored by Catherine Adams, our research associate. This is free to download from our website. Sort of interactive PDF guide. And finally, this is a research project that we've just kicked off. Interreg, it's a continuation of a previous research project, EU funded. We're looking at developing innovative insulation prototypes from waste streams and also bio-based materials. So this was with a couple of our members, Back to Earth, Thermofleece, and a French partner, the lead partner, Nomadi. And please do get involved with us, sign up as a member, sign up for one of our upcoming events on our mailing list, and please do get in touch if you'd like to find out more. So, Simon, I don't know if you want to try your mic and say hello.
Yeah, so hi everybody. So I'm trying to run this off my telephone in darkest teal. So I'm sorry if the connection is not particularly good, but Richard's doing a great job. So without further ado, I think we'll introduce our first speaker. So Jane Anderson is board member of ASBP, as a member of countless European committees, so many I don't know how she has the time to do all of these things. And I think she's probably seen as the UK's leading expert on life cycle analysis and EPD. She's an EPD verifier. So we're very lucky to have her. So over to you, Jane. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Can you see the
Yes, we can, yeah.
Excellent, okay. So, yeah, today I'm going to talk to you about EPD from the point of view of manufacturers, and the sorts of things I think it would be useful for you to know and to be thinking about. Hopefully this is really clear, but an environmental product declaration is a way of providing life cycle assessment data, so the environmental performance or impact of the product over its life cycle in a standardized way using product category rules, and that's the standard EN 15805, and then an EPD program that provides further product category rules that sort of define the format of the EPD and some other requirements. So that's what an EPD is, and there are lots of them out there already. So there's over 7,000 that have been produced and published according to 15804 around the world, the majority of those in Europe, but you can see that the big kind of players are in France and Germany. But there are a fair number of UK EPDs already out there. I think it's about 300 at the last time I counted, or EPDs that cover products produced in the UK. As Richard mentioned there's lots more information about EPD, what they are, what they include, where you can find them, how you can use them, in the briefing papers that we've produced that are available on the resources page of the ASBP website. But I guess the most important thing from a point of view of a manufacturer is how much is it going to cost. I think you'll hear much more from the other speakers about the benefits of EPD and what people get from it. So I'm not going to focus on that so much. I'm going to focus more, if you like, on what it needs from your point of view. So there are definitely costs in doing an EPD. There's your own costs as a manufacturer. That's for data collection. If you've got really good records, if you've got ISO 14001, for example, and have everything really neatly, tidily filed, then it's going to be quite easy potentially to provide data for a life cycle assessment. If you don't, and everything is in different folders with different people, then it's going to probably be a lot harder to do it. You need to spend time liaising with the LCA practitioner, potentially explaining how your product process works, running through the data, explaining what sort of materials you use. And you'll have to provide text for the environmental product declaration, so describing your manufacturing process, what the product is, the technical performance for the product, and also to check the final EPD, because it is effectively your declaration as a manufacturer. You're responsible for it, so you need to be sure you are happy with what goes out. You will need to pay for the modelling, the life cycle assessment modelling. That can be done both in-house. You can do that with tools, or you can pay an LCA practitioner to do that, and I'll explain a little bit more about that and why you might go with either of those routes. Then you need to pay for the EPD program itself that will publish the EPD. And those vary. I've got a little bit of information about that, but those vary quite considerably. So it's worth looking into that and trying to understand how much it might cost you based on what you're looking to do. And those costs are a kind of one-off upfront fee and then an annual fee for keeping the EPD on the website. And then there's verification costs. So all EPDs are verified by a third-party independent person from yourself as the manufacturer, and normally also from the EPD, the LCA practitioner that's done it. How that works in terms of how you pay varies. So some EPD programs, you pay them and they appoint the verifier. Other ones, you're free to choose the verifier and you negotiate the cost for that yourself, but I'll show that in another slide. And then there are marketing costs. It makes sense that once you've spent this money on an EPD, that you actually let people know about it and make sure that your staff know about it and are able to talk about it confidently and with understanding. So you shouldn't kind of underestimate these costs. As I've said, it really helps. The costs will be reduced in terms of the providing the data if you've got good systems there. Just a little bit of kind of trawling the web and finding out how much other people have paid from what's published. There are a really wide variety of costs, but EPD Ireland, who are actually sponsoring this particular webinar, give the range for a relatively simple product, just to do a cradle to gate EPD, in the range of 5,000 to 8,000 euros. You know, kind of at the other end of the scale, NSG, who own Pilkington and the glass manufacturers, reported an estimated cost of £100,000 for each new EPD. I think that was a misunderstanding. My understanding is that was potentially for a tool to cover glass, a tool that would be able to provide EPD for all their glass products, kind of in a much bigger geographical region, which is obviously a much more complicated process. So it does vary, but at the lower end of that scale is, you know, if you're just wanting one EPD, you shouldn't be paying really that much. I mean, this American study gave a figure of $15,000. So, you know, that's, oh, sorry, and I'm just going to let my dog out. I'm very sorry. If it can happen, it will happen. Sorry. So that's in terms of costs, and it's worth going to ask different people about how much it might cost to get a much better idea. In terms of EPD program costs, there are really different pricing structures. Most of them actually publish them, so you're able to look at that and make a decision. Most of them have, as I say, an annual cost and a one-off cost each year, or an annual cost, sorry, and a one-off cost when you first start. But the way that they price really varies. Some do it by the turnover of the company, some by the number of employees, and some of them it's just a standard fee, whatever. There are also some discounts if you're a member of a trade association that's already published EPDs within some programs, or if you're a member of the Green Building Council. And often there are discounts if you publish more EPD. And if you've got EPD from tools, it might be more expensive to verify the tool, but then it's obviously a lot cheaper generally to then produce EPD and to get them verified and registered within programs. So this is just an overview of the main programs that are kind of relevant to the UK and Ireland. ERE, I'm afraid, don't tell you how much it costs, so you will have to ask them. But you've got the costs there for the different schemes. And as I say, for example, the international EPD is all dependent on how many employees you've got. EBU depends on your turnover. So it really is, the best idea is to understand your company and then to go and look and see how much it would cost. And I would actually recommend that you engage with the different programs and ask about you know, ask about what they can offer, what support they'll give you, what marketing they actually do themselves, for example, that can help you. And the medium cost in the American study by Tazaki, that was about $2,500. So that's the sort of level of costs that we're talking about. In terms of choosing an EPD program, if cost isn't your main decision, I would say, you know, which EPD program do other people in your particular markets use? What's your customers, what are they expecting to see? Are they asking you for particular programs, or do they sound like they're more familiar with some? EPD programs need to be authoritative and robust. And Eco Platform, which is a kind of trade association for EPD programs, basically have rules for verification that they check and to ensure that the programs are following the standards. So I would really recommend that you use a program that's a member of Eco Platform, because that gives it a lot more authority. It's also, yeah, I'll come to that. And have a look at the EPD programs, because your customers are going to be looking for EPDs on EPD programs. How easy is it for you to find EPD on these different EPD programs? You know, if you can't find EPD on these EPD programs, then your customers aren't going to either. So that's my recommendation to you. And how do they make it available? So a lot of the programs now have digital kind of platforms, and they also make a lot of their EPDs available for use in tools. So that might be something that would be really useful for you. It's certainly the way things are kind of moving. So it's a question to ask, where will your EPD be available, and who already is able to use EPD from that program that are available digitally. As I say, what marketing can they do for you? Do they do presentations if we're going to have them, things like Future Build, for example? If that kind of publicity is good for you, and how much marketing material do they produce that enables you to support it? And then it might be relevant to you how much marketing you can include in the EPD. So, for example, the International Epd Program gives you a lot more opportunity to provide, if you like, information about your company, your processes, the initiatives that you have to improve the environmental impact of your products. Other EPD programs have a very, very formalized structure, and there's very little opportunity to do that. And as I say, the cost is worth finding out about. In terms of choosing an LCA practitioner to actually do your LCA, so you can go in-house, but if we say you're going to use an outside consultant, there is a list at Environdat. This is the International EPD Program. They have a list of LCA consultants. I'm sure there are other people that can do it, but certainly most of the people that do EPD regularly are listed there, and you can search by country to find people that have experience of working in the UK. Questions to ask them: how much experience do they have with EPD? Is this their first project, or obviously have they done it for a long time and they're very familiar with the standards and the procedures and the approach? How familiar are they with your product and similar products? When it comes to verification of an EPD, if the LCA practitioner doesn't understand how the product is made, then they're probably not going to have modelled it in a way that's correct. The verifier has a responsibility to be familiar with the product. So they're going to understand the product, and they will ask questions if it's clear that the LCA practitioner hasn't understood how the product actually works and that the model represents that. So it is worth making sure that they're familiar with your product, and if they're not, then I really think it's valuable to make sure that the LCA practitioner actually visits your factory or a factory and understands how the actual process works. Have they used the EPD program before? That enables them to work much more easily. And do they seem to be realistic about the time frames and the amount of effort that you'll need to make? You know, this is time consuming. When I've done EPDs, it always takes quite a long time for people to provide data, to do the modelling, and then to get the verification and to answer those questions and to go through. So, you know, if they say they can do it in 6 weeks, it's probably not true. And do you trust them? Do they, you know, the advice that they give you, and I think you should ask them for advice about what's the best approach. You know, do you trust them? And then obviously how much it will cost. But I think that should be the central thing. I hope you would work with somebody that you trust. So in terms of how many EPD and what sort do you actually need, you can have EPDs that just cover one product. You can have, if you produce lots of different products and you want to provide data for all of them, then potentially it's worth considering doing that, and in that case using an EPD tool. If your products are broadly speaking very similar, so if they're all made of the same thing, let's think of say something like glass wool, the difference is really in the density of the product. The actual manufacture of the product is enormously similar. So in that case, it may be sensible to provide an EPD per kilogram of product rather than producing different, having to produce lots of different EPDs for products that really just vary in terms of their weight per metre squared. So there are ways around the way you produce these that are relevant. Some programs have a limit, for example, of plus or minus 10% in terms of the impact for the declared unit. So it's worth checking that. But then you can provide, one EPD that covers a very big range of products. The EPD tools would basically, if you produce a really big range of slightly different products, then an EPD tool may well be the way to be able to provide EPDs for your range. And it really depends on what your customers are asking for and how much money you want to commit. It may be worth producing an EPD for the generic product first. And if you use an LCA practitioner that has that potential, they can potentially convert that first EPD into an EPD tool if it's useful at a later date. In terms of tools, there are different sorts. So BRE has a tool called Lca, which is what we call well, it's an off-the-shelf pre-verified EPD tool that can really produce an EPD for allegedly everything or anything. So it's customized effectively to deal with your product system. And that tool, One Click LCA, also has a similar tool which they're just I think launching or have recently launched. So for that, it basically you as a manufacturer can use that tool to produce EPDs yourself, and it's worth asking about the cost for that and the cost of producing the EPDs that come out of that, and seeing how that compares to the other route. There are also bespoke EPD tools that are developed particularly for a sector or company specific a company. It may be in your sector that there already are these tools. So for example, in the UK, these tools already exist for cement, for concrete, for timber, kiln-dried timber, I think. And there are quite a few others that are available to trade association members, where the trade association has funded the developments of the tool, and then its members can use those tools or access the trade association will develop EPDs for you using those tools. So that obviously reduces costs. If you want to start from scratch, then you can have one of these tools developed for you. There will be higher upfront costs, but then it's a much lower cost per EPD. The NSG example that I said at 100,000, I mean, that's a really expensive tool for a very complex kind of product system. It shouldn't be costing you that much really to get a tool for one kind of specific type of product. It should be much less than that. So that's kind of everything. I hope that's answered your questions, but if you've got more questions, I'll look forward to hearing from you at the end. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. That's great. So keep your questions coming in. We've got one question coming in from Tabitha. Tabitha, I wonder perhaps if I could ask you to unmute yourself and put your video on and ask your question.
You want me to do things that are so complex.
I'm sorry, I know, but I think that's within your skill set. I really do.
I'm here.
Fantastic.
So I must admit, sometimes I know these things are so necessary, but sometimes they so seem like a tax on business, and the disparity in costs is really shocking. But I came across a really interesting report, Jane, that you'd done that and was published in June on the embodied carbon of concrete in buildings, and the analysis of published EPDs, where you showed some quite shocking disparities, or maybe some of the noughts had got put in the wrong places. Can you would you like to comment on this? And are you, I suppose, maybe from the timber industry, will you be doing research into other materials, like steel and concrete, to bring everything up to again, a more level playing field?
Yeah. So I think we did highlight there were some disparities. There were some errors. We didn't find so many disparities, I think, in the, let's say, the embodied carbon, the GWP figures. But when we started looking, for example, at some of the energy figures, there were some errors. I think sometimes that was just kind of, there had been an error in the reporting. Instead of megajoules, it was gigajoules, or the other way around, which we've highlighted, and they have all been corrected subsequent through that process. And one of the reasons we did that paper was, if you like, to give people like verifiers and LCA practitioners an overview of what they should expect. So as part of the EPD verification process, the verifier needs to check that the EPD is plausible, and that's normally done by actually looking at similar products and checking that the data that's provided makes sense. So yeah. In terms of doing that work for other products, it's kind of on my list, but it's not coming soon, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Tabitha. That's great. So we've got 20 minutes of Q&A at the end. So we've got quite a lot of ground to cover. So I think we should press on. And so I'd like to introduce my next speaker, which is Niall Croissant. So Niall has been with Ecological Building Systems since, I believe, since they opened their doors in 2000. And they've been members of ours since we launched in 2011. The mission statement for Ecological Building Systems is to support the construction sector in the creation of a better built environment through the supply of innovative and sustainable ecological building materials and solutions, and deliver quality, affordable products and training. They're a great organisation. Niall is also on the board of directors of the Irish Green Building Council. He's a certified passive house consultant and has even built his own passive house. So we're in expert hands. So I'd like to hand over to Niall and ask you to entertain us, Niall.
Thank you. Thank you, Simon. I promise not to sing like I did before we started this presentation. So thank you for inviting me here today, and it's wonderful to be with such esteemed company. I recall sitting in a course with Jane where she delivered for the Irish Green Building Council, must be 7 or 8 years ago, but I was fascinated at the time by the life cycle of a toaster, and she used that as a sample of explaining how materials have such an impact on the environment that we take for granted every day. Thank you for the introduction there. I can skip that slide then on me, because you've done that. I can just give a brief background on our company. Our parent company is called McCann & Byrne. We're based in Ireland and we have offices in the UK. Our Irish company was established in 1906, our parent company called McCann & Byrne, as a little merchant shop, which evolved over the century. And around the year 2000, Ecological Building Systems was launched when I joined it. And that's with the company that was originally McCann & Byrne, focused on timber importation and traditional building products. It diversified into providing the Irish and British market with more sustainable building materials, such as natural insulations and other good stuff like that. So we established UK offices in Carlisle in the year 2007, where we have a full training centre and we have a technical support team there. And we do supply quite a broad array of materials with a sustainable focus, ranging from wood fiberboard, cork, lime, thermoplasters, and hemp and jute insulations, among other products. So there's quite a broad spectrum of materials, whose details can be found on our new website. You can get a lot more information there, which we launched recently. In the context of today, I'm going to speak with two hats in a way. I'm going to speak from a supplier's perspective as Ecological Building Systems, and also as someone who works with the Irish Green Building Council on the board of directors with the Irish Green Building Council and what we've been doing in Ireland. As a company, we import and distribute a broad array of materials, primarily from Germany and Italy, and some from Spain. Just to, I suppose I'm preaching to the people that have already know a lot of this information, but in terms of embodied carbon, this is often cited as the blind spot in the construction industry. Between now and 2060, the building industry is poised to add 230 billion square meters of new construction worldwide, which is the equivalent to basically doubling the amount of buildings we currently have on the planet for the next 4 decades. So that's looking at building a city the size of New York every month for the next 40 years. So clearly the material impact on the environment is becoming quite considerable and is increasing more and more. And embodied carbon will be responsible for almost half of total new construction emissions between now and 2050. I just recap on this slide because this is quite old now, it's from 2011, but it really brought to light to me at the time from a research paper by Minka McInerney on the impact of carbon on buildings once you compare it to operational energy. And what Minka studied was the 2 passive houses. One on the left here is a non-renewable passive house built with masonry or high embodied carbon materials. Whereas the building on the right, this is a timber frame building using much more lower embodied carbon materials. And both buildings have the same operational energy pretty much. But what you found was if you converted the additional embodied carbon used to construct this low energy building to operational energy, you could run this building for 25 years for space heating. So that, for me, in a very powerful way, showed the impact of embodied carbon. And there's also been a lot of good visual work which we regularly refer to, such as the work from Wood for Good, to compare the contrast between building forms and construction methods and how they compare whether you build, for example, this project in Brideport House with concrete compared to building it with CLT construction, and the carbon saved by building with such a method by using more sustainable forms of construction. In the form of, in terms of some of the products we supply, I just took this as an example. This is the hemp insulation, which has a circular life cycle. And the basic raw material in hemp, it's grown. We import it from Germany, but happily now there are soon, or if there are not already, some producers in the UK and hopefully in Ireland soon, there will be locally produced insulation materials and more available from, there are already some in the form of sheep wool, but also in the form of agricultural products as well. And hemp is an incredibly renewable product. It is a low embodied energy, it requires minimum chemicals during its growth, and after cultivation, it loosens the soil. In terms of the cycle, the main fiber used in the insulation is the outside of the bast fiber. And this is separated from the hemp plant, which goes into a processing plant, after which it's marketed, and then it's supported, delivered to the house, installed, and it can be recycled at a later stage. So in terms of materials and what impact we can have on reducing the embodied carbon and in the environmental footprint on buildings, I really like this graph from the World Green Building Council, which is also used by the UK Green Building Council. And I used it yesterday in another webinar where we really have a huge amount of input at the design stage in reducing the carbon, embodied carbon in buildings, where we can build less, of course, but also build clever by optimizing material usage and use low carbon materials. And I think this is where EPDs, environmental product declarations, really have a key role to play for designers and for specifiers in ensuring once they analyze and review EPDs, they can make a selective decision about what is the most effective material to specify with minimum environmental impact. In terms of EPDs, there are a number of reasons from our experience as suppliers and from our discussions with manufacturers that we work with. Though most of them have EPDs, but there are still some which do not have EPDs. And we are regularly speaking to them, and it's a project that those that don't have EPDs at the moment are working on. And the benefits with EPDs are basically you gain a competitive advantage as a supplier, because a published EPD, it produces documented and certified proof of the environmental performance of the product over its life cycle. So I'm sure we're all familiar with the term greenwash, and products that are branded green but have questionable bona fides. By getting an EPD from a third party, this can really strengthen the benefits and clarify the benefits of using a material with a lower environmental impact. For us and for other guests here today, I'm sure it is key for adhering to your company mission to provide more sustainable alternatives on the market. So specifiers, for example, they can earn points for using more ecological materials and infrastructure for rating systems when they use these products. So BREEAM, LEED, or in Ireland, we have a national standard called the Home Performance Index, where if you have an EPD for a specific material, that gives you additional points and you move up on the rating scale. In terms of EPDs, it can also be implemented into the marketing strategy that Jane referenced beforehand. So there is investment needed in that, but again, it can communicate the product's bona fides and environmental credentials as well. It can also improve the supply chain management system. I read a report from Zella, the manufacturers of Eton blocks, and I saw one of their presentations recently where they created EPDs for a number of their products, and they found in the supply chain they could make value engineering decisions and improve the supply chain process and save on costs and improve efficiency. So an EPD isn't a means just to an end. It actually can lead to added value and improved efficiency in the manufacturing supply chain overall. And yeah, basically it's an effective benchmarking against competitors as well, and it increases visibility on international markets. So if you are a manufacturer, like for example Gutex, our partner, or other manufacturers, once you have an EPD going into other markets in the US or throughout Europe, it's a very important certificate to have to gain market advantage and acceptability. So in the context of us, Ecological, these are just a selection of EPDs from different manufacturers. For example, on the left here, we see one for Dyson Cork Lime thermal plasters. This is for Gutex wood fiber, and this is for calcium silicate boards made by a company called Calcitherm. So that's just a selection of them. There are many more from other manufacturers out there, but that's just to give you a view of what an EPD looks like. And we're regularly more and more being asked for these by a number of architects. In terms of for us, for those that are partners who are manufacturing products, the very few that may not have EPDs, we encourage them to develop EPDs, and as I said, they are developing them, those that don't have it at the moment. And really, as I said, it will gain market acceptance, it'll strengthen specification. I know of, off the top of my head, about 4 or 5 projects at least, where there are schemes of houses where the architect is specifically looking for an EPD, and it's part of the practices policy that their products used on the project must have an EPD if they are available. So it's relatively early days, but in the last 2 years now, I'm seeing this becoming more apparent in a number of quite large projects. It's also a requirement for specifiers seeking to get LEED, BREEAM, or Home Performance Index certification. And as more and more specifiers and developers and construction companies commit to EPDs, it makes it even more critical. So if I'm speaking to manufacturers who don't have EPDs, an argument and a proposal I make is we have Heinz, who are an internationally renowned construction companies, and we have CISC, we have architects like Cody's, RKD, Wayne Moorhead, you have Dublin City Council. These have all signed a commitment. They're signatories to future projects going forward. They will prioritize materials that have EPDs. Again, with my Irish Green Building Council hat on, this is information from one of their presentations where the built environment influences over 50% of Ireland's carbon emissions. And in the context of embodied carbon, I'd like to highlight this document, bringing embodied carbon up front. This document is really was developed in collaboration with member GBC, Green Building councils and partners from over 200 stakeholders, and was released last year as a call to action to tackle embodied carbon. And some key points from it. in that context, where that net zero embodied carbon should be pursued as part of a whole life cycle to approach carbon reduction that includes net zero operational carbon. So the definition of net zero embodied carbon in practice is a net zero embodied carbon building, new or renovated, or infrastructure or asset which is highly resource efficient with upfront carbon minimized to the greatest extent possible and all remaining embodied carbon reduced, or as a last resort, offset. So this is becoming more and more apparent. We see, for example, yesterday at the International Pacifiers Conference, 2 days ago, Wolfgang Feist announced that there will be a paper released later this year where the Pacifiers Institute will analyze the effect of embodied carbon in passive houses, and whereas we know, for example, passive houses are exceptionally low in operational energy, at the moment they don't really account for the embodied carbon or the upfront carbon in the buildings, but they will look to include that, I think, in the near future as part of the assessment method. So by 2030, as part of this paper, it states all new buildings and infrastructure and renovations will have at least 40% less embodied carbon with significant upfront carbon reduction. And by 2050, new buildings, infrastructure and renovations will have net zero embodied carbon. And all buildings, including existing buildings, must be net zero operational. So you can download the full report from this website, those of you that aren't familiar with it. I'm sure a lot of you are, but it's a very useful reference point. And I find as a supplier or for the manufacturers, it really is a wake-up call for where industry is going. In the European context, if I could put that on the table and not get into trouble, the European Commission have a document which aims to, for use in green public procurement and regulations across Europe. It's called Levels. So this is the first steps towards sustainable performance of the Buildings Directive in Europe for the EPD in Europe, and it includes life cycle assessment and life cycle costing, and it's piloted across Europe over the last 2 years. And the Irish Green Building Council is supporting industry through Life for Levels with 8 other green building councils to mainstream the use of life cycle assessment and LCC for the next 3 years. So this is going to see, in terms of governmental bodies and on a larger scale, green public procurement, looking at utilising and really realising the importance of life cycle assessment and in turn the importance of EPDs. I asked Pat in the Irish Green Building Council for some statistical data. At the moment there's limited statistical data in relation to life cycle assessment of buildings in Ireland and the UK that we have, but he provided me with this information based on 12 apartment developments in the UK and Ireland. The embodied carbon ranged from 355 to 2,600 kilos CO2 per meter squared per home. So this was an average of 915.5 kilos CO2 per square meter. And this embodied carbon is equivalent to 114 years of operating the homes built on the current regulations. For example, in Ireland, all homes must achieve an A2 energy standard, which is nearly zero energy building, from this year. So this is quite a long return on your carbon. And so the one Irish apartment development included in this study had an impact of over 1,500 kilos CO2 per meter squared, which is equivalent to 195 years operating at the current standard. So you see there's quite a long way to go, and there's a huge amount of improvement that can be done in the materials we're using in building and reducing their environmental impact. In Nordic countries, on the other hand, in Sweden, Norway and Finland, based on 127 apartment developments, it had a much lower average of 365. So this demonstrates in the UK and Ireland, there's huge potential for improvement in reducing the embodied carbon or the upfront carbon in buildings.
2 minutes, Niall, please.
Thank you. So in Ireland, this is the EPD Ireland platform that Jane referenced. So it's a very simple platform where companies who are members of the council can upload their EPDs, or there's a fee if you're not a member of the IGBC. And it's a central database that all specifiers and local authorities can get access to EPDs rather than going around every company. It's a central platform. And once you put in a search into the platform, for example, this is just a few EPDs that we supply that's on the platform. You can click on a specific product. You can search under different standards, EN 15804 that Jane referenced earlier, or others. And then you can go into the actual EPD and download the EPD from that platform. So it's very easy to use and very easy to upload data to. And Epd Ireland has published already a lot of EPDs. Finally, in Ireland, there's also, I mentioned the Home Performance Index, and this is a really useful tool to add value for homes. Aside from energy performance, this looks at the environmental impact of buildings. I'm not going to go into this in detail, but a lot of information can be found on the website for the Home Performance Index here. And this is just one project which achieved Home Performance Index Gold by Wayne Moorhead Architects, and it's also a certified passive house that used wood fibre insulation. So to summarize, EPDs, they provide complete and fully transparent information to reduce that greenwashing that really, I'm sure a lot of the suppliers listening in today are also supplying natural materials. It's quite frustrating. So the EPDs give a level playing field and allows genuine products to be, to promote their environmental credentials, but it's not an evaluation of a construction material, an EPD. It's really a source for materials ingredients and its environmental impact over its entire life cycle. It's issued based on harmonized standard by a third party, and as markets evolve and specifiers are going to demand EPDs more and more, as we're already experienced, and that's going to drive manufacturers to develop EPDs, which will lead to greater transparency and aid key decision makers to make informed decisions with lower environmental impact. So the development of EPDs will encourage manufacturers to develop more sustainable supply chains, reduce waste, and hopefully improve efficiency. That's basically it. If you have queries after this, this is our website. We provide a lot of support and calculations and U values and so on. And a lot of the information can be found on our website and training courses, etc. So thank you, Simon. That's basically my presentation, and happy to take any questions now.
Fantastic. Thanks ever so much, Niall. We're going to keep the questions for the Q&A later. Okay. I'm going to rush right on, if I might introduce Kevin Underwood. So Kevin is the Technical Director at the British Woodworking Federation, which is the trade association for the woodworking and joinery manufacturing industry in the UK. And they are long-term members of ASBP. So over to you, Kevin, if I can ask you to share your screen, and off you go. Kevin, you're on mute.
Okay, can you see the presentation?
We can, thank you very much.
Right, good afternoon everyone. I'm Kevin Underwood, Technical Director for the British Woodworking Federation. I'm also chairman of BSI Technical Committee B5381, which deals primarily with doors and windows. I'm also a member of CEMTC 33WG1, which is the mirror committee to the BSI committee, or vice versa. We asked to talk about our experience with EPDs. So following the last two presentations, I can talk about what we did to achieve an EPD, which may give an additional perspective to what's just been said. So to recap, because I've included some of the things that have already been discussed. So what is an EPD? Environmental Product Declaration communicates verifiable, accurate, non-misleading environmental information for products and their applications, thereby supporting scientifically based fair choices and stimulating the potential for market-driven continuous environmental improvement. We have a few images of EPDs there, one for which is a generic one for PVC and one of our own for a timber window. Now I've only experienced, BWF has only got experience of working with BRE and their Lina tools. So sorry if this is going to be specific to our experience of Lina. Very good experience, by the way. and felt it was valuable working with Lena to achieve our EPD. One of the perceptions was that the manufacturers would lack the expertise or the personnel to create the EPDs, but we found with working with Lena, this was not the case. The tool provided the resource that meant that most companies could do life cycle assessments and then get them verified and take them through to a full EPD. So no one needs to struggle to progress their life cycle assessments, and even if they were struggling, there was a Lena consultant available to answer any specific questions. It was like a chat room experience. Just type our questions in and quite quickly get answers back and allow the data entry to proceed. So we had a very simple allocation method for materials. We looked at energy, water, and waste, and I'm going to change my view because I'm disappearing. That's better. Okay, and waste can be made into a simple pro rata basis. Mass balance calculator keeps track on whether materials entering the production process are equal to the mass of materials contained in the finished product and any waste generated. And Lena determines the effects of transport for different locations and modes of transport. A manufacturer with access to Lena software can develop unverified lifecycle assessments at no additional cost in order to evaluate different scenarios for the manufacture of their products, e.g. they can change raw materials, source them from different locations, make more efficient use of their raw materials, or make use of recycled materials. The verification process is also straightforward. The manufacturer simply uploads evidence of the inputs that they've used, along with information about their product and the production processes, and the tool has already done the necessary calculations, so that is already undertaken. We had one member who joined the use of the tool so that they could fulfill some of their requirements under their ISO 14001 certification. So one of the key drivers for our members to take interest in EPDs was to compare different products. So how can different products be compared? EPDs are intended to be used to compare the contribution products make to the environmental performance of a whole building. For comparisons of products and services outside of the building context, all aspects of the EPD need to be considered. EPDs at the building level, EN 15978, Sustainability of Construction Works Building Level Assessment of Environmental Performance of Buildings Calculation Method. This is the standard that we use to look at the effects on the whole building. Have a similar standard for framework level. And when we look at comparisons, we want to look at the differences between generic EPDs and product-specific EPDs. And then we're considering the effects of the consistency of the product category rules, the consistency of functional units as what was used to calculate the impacts reported in the EPD, how that's measured, and also between EPDs you've got to look at consistency on the product stages that were assessed. Let's go into that in more detail. BSEN ISO 14025-1, Environmental Labels and Declarations Type 3, Environmental Declarations, Principles and Procedures. It says you may permit the use of equivalent data for generic EPDs that could vary widely from those developed for specific products. At the BWF, we were encouraging members to look at, rather than adopt a generic EPD for timber windows or doors, we are encouraging members to prepare life cycle assessments or EPDs for their own product. Then it could be more specific and more accurate. So we work to the PCR in 15804. The standard provides a structure to ensure that all EPDs of construction products, construction services and construction processes are derived, verified and presented in a harmonised way. And since that was published, we've also now have PCR specifically for windows and pedestrian door sets. When we started doing EPD based on 15804, we didn't have guidance on things such as the functional unit. But now we've got the PCR specifically for windows and pedestrian door sets. This gives us more information how to standardise the EPD that's being produced. So we focused primarily on cradle to gate EPD. So this is the product stage only. Looks at raw material supply, transport, manufacturing and associated processes, and is based on modules A1 to A3 in 15804. The next type of EPD is a cradle to gate with options. This is the product stage and selected further life cycle stages. It is based on modules A1 to A3 plus other selected optional modules, e.g. end of life information C1 to C4 or information module D. So as I said, initial focus was on cradle to gate assessments. Greater understanding will be retained by encouraging members to consider cradle to gate with options to cover more stages of the product life cycle. We feel that with the cradle to gate, it's not, well, as other people on the call would know, it's not really giving the full life impression of the products, and we need to extend our knowledge on the other stages. So the life cycle stages, I think I'll maybe skip through these because people are going into too much detail. We are interested in end-of-life cases, and I draw people's attention to this Euro Windoor study, which is looking at end-of-life treatment of wood from doors and windows. New wooden doors and windows entering the market today will be in place for anywhere from 15 to over 100 years. As such, the end-of-life management of these products seems distant. However, the possibility to recycle these products at end of life is an important component of their overall sustainability. So it's useful to know where your products are going to end up so you can complete the full knowledge for your EPD. The outputs, again, many people would know what these are, but when we have undertaken EPD, these are the outputs that are evaluated. And from one of our EPDs, we get figures, these figures, presented. But what we don't know and what we can't direct our members to is which of these impacts have the most effect on the environment. So you said with the Leaner tool, we can model the manufacturing scenarios and improve, change, vary these outputs. But we don't know as manufacturers where we should be focusing. When do we make a beneficial improvement? What value is it? We don't have enough input from our members in life cycle assessments and figures to do benchmarking ourselves. But as we encourage members to do more work, then we can get more figures and at least allow us to tell the manufacturer where they stand in relation to other manufacturers. Could these figures be presented in a clearer way in the EPD? This table shows how the LCA results are currently presented in the EPD. If we just change the format, then we can see where more of the impacts are taking place. Blue for raw material supply, orange for transport, and grey for manufacturing. We can see there under the Leaner tool for the raw material supply, we're getting a negative global warming potential, or CO2 equivalent, for the timber materials that we're using. Could we present the energy in a different way? Or the transport, manufacturing costs. So just using the figures from the EPD and presenting them in a different form could just encourage our members to look at where they could make the best savings. They're looking at energy, then if they can save energy in the raw material supply, it looks like there's more opportunity. Or secondly, in the manufacturing, transport looks like it's presenting a small amount of the energy used. Similarly for water. So most of the water resource used was in the raw material supply. So taking the environmental impacts of our products further forward, looking at influences in the marketplace which may change people's attitudes. This is just a couple of quotes from the Planning for the Future consultation from MHCLG. And they said, "We will work tirelessly as part of this government's wider commitment to the zero emissions by 2050, delivering a green housing revolution of attractive and environmentally friendly homes." Another one, from 2025, the future home standard will require up to 80% lower carbon emissions for all new homes. This will help bring an environmental revolution to new home building, tackling climate change while keeping household bills low. This will ensure everyone, including developers, is doing their bit to protect the environment. So some encouraging words from the government in the way.
2 minutes, Kevin.
Sorry, 3 minutes.
2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay, I also work as part of the technical committee on CPA's Marketing Integrity Group. And this is going to develop a code of practice. It's to give confidence to those in the supply chain that use product information, that it is accurate, accessible, up-to-date, clear and unambiguous, and can therefore be relied upon when making decisions about using those products at any stage of design, specification, installation, use and maintenance. So EPD falls brilliantly into this category. When we're making environmental claims, if we're making them on EPDs, I think that hits the mark as far as the MIG is concerned. I work on 10TC33. Our future standardization work is being described in the standardization request. One of the concepts that we're looking at for the new work on harmonized standards is bringing in basic requirements for construction work 7, sustainability. We jump down. The harmonised standards shall also prescribe that when a manufacturer wants to declare the performance of its product in relation to the essential characteristic environmental sustainability, they shall present in the declaration of performance the results of the assessment of all those elements of performance specified in the harmonised standard in question, and he shall include in the calculation all mandatory modules according to EN 15804. So there is a proposal to move towards EPD based on EN 15804 in some form, not necessarily the form that they are at the moment. There is some various committees looking at the ways that basic requirement of construction work 7 can be included in harmonised standards, but because it is complex and it is not clear on how that's going to be progressed, then in our standardisation request at the moment, the way to deliver the declarations in relation to the basic requirements for construction work 7 is left blank. So we're not really sure how that's going to move forward. Last thing, digital exchange of construction information. There are a number of drivers from legislation and regulation that's driving the use of digital communication for construction information. For example, the Hackett Review refers to the golden thread. The Building Safety Bill has proposals for the digital transfer of fire safety information. Big concerned there may be divergence of methods and technologies to achieve this, and I think that one of the best ways is through the use of BIM. And in that respect, we have this ISO standard in development. The document provides the principles and requirements to enable environmental technical data provided in environmental product declarations for construction products and services, construction elements, and integrate technical systems to be used building information modelling to assist lifecycle assessment at construction work level. And that's it. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Kevin. That's super. We'll keep your questions coming in. We're running a little bit behind schedule, so I'm going to press right on and then we'll get to our Q&A afterwards. We might run on for 5 minutes, so those of you who want to can just hang on for the Q&A. So I'm going to just hand over to our final speaker for the session this afternoon. So this is Tobias Brinkmann from Brands and Values in Germany. So Brands and Values is a consulting company with a focus on sustainability, founded in 2004. So they're not only sustainability experts, they're also communication experts. So we're delighted to welcome Tobias to the seminar this afternoon. And I'm going to hand over to you, ask you to speak for us. Thank you very much.
Now you can hear me, I hope.
We can. Thank you, Tobias.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to speak here today. I will gladly talk about the work we do in our company in the north of Germany, in Bremen. And I will basically focus on our study that we performed nearly 2 years ago. It's called EPDs, Benefits, Expectations and Fulfillment from the point of view of the stakeholders. I will talk about the findings of our study, and besides, we worked on an EPD analyzer tool that helps especially the EPD owners to learn, understand, compare and manage the EPDs. Just let me tell you a little bit about the background. I'm doing now LCAs for more than 20 years. And before I started doing EPDs about 7 years ago, LCA was just mostly for big companies, big institutes and politics. But always there was the main focus on the environmental performance and or improvement. What is greener and why? And now I often deal with sales departments and marketing, and always they ask me, why is it so expensive? How is the return on invest? We won a green building pitch. Can I have the EPD next week? Often I don't hear questions about the heart of the EPD, the life cycle assessment. What does this indicator mean? How can we improve this? So with this study, we wanted to show all the benefits related to EPDs and LCAs, as well as the expectation and fulfillments from the stakeholder point of view. And so what we did, we performed an literature research and investigated more than 25 benefit dimensions. For example, transparency, data gathering for internal purposes, innovation, competitive advantage, credibility, monitoring, internal decision-making tool, assistance with purchasing decisions, objectivity, marketing, B2C or B2B, improvement of the public image, but also dimensions like access to the market, benchmark between products, improvement of firm internal knowledge, and so on. And so we wanted to know how were the expectations from the stakeholders and how these expectations got fulfilled. And we invited more than 1,000 stakeholders to participate in this survey, and more than 107 companies joined, which is quite a high number. So it shows also the interest in this topic of the EPD. And just the results in a nutshell, the satisfaction of the stakeholder was really good. So more than 75–80% are happy with the system. and also nearly the same number, even a little bit more, said they would do the update which is necessary in the construction sector after 5 years of validity. So this is a quite nice result. But also, if we take a look in the results for the benefit dimensions, now you see like a cake diagram, and you see the pieces are the dimensions, and the yellow, the gray areas behind this scale is the expectation, and the yellow area is the fulfillment. And the more out you get from the center of this graph, the more or the higher the expectations or the fulfillment was. So when we take a look at the expectations, in particular where the expectations were high, you see the credibility, you see the objectivity, the transparency, the ecological building assessment, and the providing of LCA-based information on environmental aspects of the product. These were the expectations which were quite high from the point of view of the stakeholders. If we now, and the improvement of the public image, if we now take a look to the benefit categories in which the stakeholders are quite satisfied with the degree of fulfillment, you see we sorted the fulfillment more or less clockwise. So here you have the benefit dimensions where the expectations were nearly fulfilled, which were the data gathering for internal purposes, the improvement of firm internal knowledge about environmental impacts of products, the compliance with legal requirements for public communication. If we take now a look to the another direction, so to take a look at the performance categories in which the interest groups expected considerably more, we have especially the benchmarking, the assistance with purchasing decisions, increase in revenues, and the marketing B2C. But also we asked some questions concerning EPD knowledge and comprehension. We wanted to test the participants' understanding of EPD. So they were asked to rate a false statement. Here we ask, an EPD is a seal that proves that the products are environmentally friendly. And more than 24% they agreed with this statement, which is a false statement. The EPD just shows the environmental performance of the product in a transparent way, but it doesn't say it's a green product. And so we see here that not all of the stakeholders, they really understood what is the EPD about. And then we also ask the participants if the results inside the EPDs are well understood. And also here we have the majority that disagrees with this statement. So the stakeholders told us, we don't understand basically what's inside of this EPD, and this makes a lot of things difficult to improve the product, to do a good marketing, because if they don't understand what's inside, how can they do this? So coming now to the findings of our study, we generally can say the customers are satisfied with their EPDs. However, the expectations are not fulfilled in any of the benefit categories. Especially benchmarking and marketing can be improved. and the cost-benefit ratio could be better. So from these findings, we created a vision, and that states that we believe that if the EPD owner understands better EPDs and related topics, the degree of fulfillment for the analyzed benefit dimensions will increase significantly. And for this, we created mainly for our customers until now an online tool that enables the EPD owners to better understand and learn about life cycle assessments, and therefore it helps to optimize the products from the ecological side. And to give you just a short impression of this tool, I just show you the standard EPD, the PDF version. And probably all you know this table, even though it's in German, but you have a lot of numbers and figures. And coming now to a digital and interactive EPD tool, we enable the client, the person who's interested in EPD, to import EPDs manually or digital, and we visualize all the indicators. We included some rules of thumb for product optimization. This is not, it's just a rule of thumb, but where to start with, changing things. Is it in the usage stage, or is it in the production stage? Is it energy? Things like this. And on each page, we explain environmental topic. What is global warming? What is an acidification potential? We also enable the user to perform an ecological assessment. So which indicators are important to us, to the company? What do they mean? We can calculate, and basically we also can compare product EPDs for internal benchmarks. This is not meant to be published externally. It's just to give the opportunity to someone to start comparing why differ some indicators from the competition EPD. So this is a learning platform basically. And to just show a few screenshots, you see here the how to import the data from the EPD. You can manually insert the numbers. You can import the XML plus EPD format, and you can directly connect to the Ökobaudat in Germany. What we do then, we explain the environmental topics on every page that you see here. We have the global warming. You can click on it and it opens and it says what it is. We show the life cycle modules which have how much impact. So this helps a lot in understanding, just to visualize the values. And also it helps to perform an assessment of the EPD results. They are normally used in the construction sector to perform the building life cycle assessment. But the company, the owner of the EPD, the owner of the product, he wants to know, where am I? Where's my competition company? And also they would like to know, so which of all these numbers or impact indicators is important to my company. So we introduced quite an old ecological assessment method from the German Environmental Agency, and adapted it to the EPD system. And we also have the possibility to do some calculations. If we want to create a building part for a building, we can add certain EPDs and create a new EPD basically, but just for internal calculations. And Then, which is for a lot of people of interest to perform and benchmark, we can compare via a single score assessment, but also we show the results in an unweighted way. And just to say it again, it's not meant for public communication, but it's for the learning process inside the company. And also we explain here, if you have different EPDs, we give hints if different PCRs are used, if the EPDs are from different ages, if they are from different regions, things like this. So yeah, and that's it basically from my side. I think I finished a little bit early.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Tobias. It's really interesting. So, so just tell me a little bit about your tool. Is it available to the general public? Is there a cost involved? Yeah,
it's available online, and everyone can register by himself. There are some costs involved. It depends on the functionality. It starts, I think, by €30 a month, up to 100.
Okay.
Until now, we don't do a lot of marketing for this because we still, are in the phase of testing it with our clients.
Okay.
But they are quite happy so far.
Yeah, it looks like a really great tool. I mean, EPDs are quite complex documents, and so I think that's we need this type of support, I think, to get the best out of them. So we've run a little bit. Thank you very much, Tobias. We've just to say, just before I go, so Tobias's report is a free download. So there's a link on from our website. So you just need to put in your name and address, and it's a free download. I really recommend it. It's a really interesting read to get a cross section of EPD users and their responses to the EPD and how useful they found them and so on. So we've got quite a few questions that have come in over the time, but Jane has been multitasking as always and has managed to ask, to answer most of them, I think it's fair to say. We've got some, we'll send the chat around. Has anybody got any final questions that they want to ask?
Yeah, I have one question.
All right, David. Hi. Yeah.
How are you? Thank you. It's just it's incredible to me to the cost of an EPD, and so I'm trying to sort that out in relation to why is it such a cost? I mean, it looks like around 6,000. Am I wrong in thinking it's around 6,000 pounds or so?
Yeah, I mean, they might start about 5,000. Depends on the complexity of the product, of course.
Then there's a yearly fee. I'm just trying to. I've been looking into this for 4 or 5 years because we have all the data that shows that our inotherm is low carbon recycled insulation. Been a question about that, but it's the question of I feel from listening to Niall and others how important it would be for us to get an EPD certification for the project, to make it more aware of that it exists in that way. But the cost is phenomenal. We're a small, we're a small little enterprise here. Our partner where it's made is in France, but I'll have to convince them now to put some funds towards it, because it's made in Europe.
All right, David, thank you. Jane?
That's why I need assistance with it. I want to be able to have them, a way to convince them to.
All right, David, thank you.
Okay, I'll
stop.
stop.
I think, basically it isn't a quick process to go through. So in terms of doing them, it does normally take us kind of a week to 2 weeks of effort at least to actually do the life cycle assessment, to write the report, and to discuss with the verifier the concerns that they might have, and also to liaise with yourselves and potentially visit the factory to understand how the process is undertaken. So it's a time-consuming activity, And it also, the software that you need to actually do that, so that software probably starts at £8,000 to £10,000 for the LCA practitioner. That's the kind of the cost of getting into the game. So it isn't a cheap process. I mean, from your point of view, if you're concerned, then something like a tool from One-Click LCA or BRE Leaner, then it's your time. You're not having to pay somebody else to do it. If you have time and less money, then that's certainly a solution. But I think you'll find potentially the cost of actually accessing those tools is...
I understand that. Sorry, we've done a full life cycle assessments, and whether or not we've done that, we do that, it's reviewed, but will all the work we've done be applicable, and so we don't have to have someone go through it all again, as long as we can certify it?
It should be applicable. If you follow the standard, then you should be able to submit it. You just need to follow the standard and provide the information that's required to meet all the requirements of the standard.
All right, thank you, Jane. I've got another question that's come in from Tabitha. Tabitha, can I ask you to take yourself off mute and we get to see your smiley face? Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Sorry, this is for Kevin at British Woodworking Federation. And yeah, can you give us a general figure? I suppose this leads back to what David was saying, you know, about the cost of the Leaner tool. You know, this is not obviously some specifics, but is it sitting in line with what Jane has said?
Well, we have to be cautious. It's not my pricing, it's BRE's pricing. I think that BRE's pricing, from what we've heard, is very reasonable.
Right.
But it is a tool. It does involve an upfront subscription to use the tool, and as has just been mentioned, it relies on the operator of the tool to get all the details, enter all the data, etc. So there is a saving because you're having to do a lot of the legwork yourself. With our members, the ones that progressed the furthest were the ones where I actually went and did the work with them and showed them hand in hand how it was done. Yeah, sorry, I can't put the full detail in, but that's it. It was quite effective.
And that's really helpful to know, because as an industry, is that what we need to do? You know, to actually get more of our products with EPDs and actually full ones through to, you know, Part D?
Well, as I said, most of our work was on modules A1 to A3, so the cradle to gate, and I would have liked to extend it further. I think the future is with full life cycle EPDs, and it would also help us with marketing of the timber products to get that type of verified information, because then people, as we said in the presentations, can trust the information that's being prepared. Yeah, I mean, the other factor that I said was difficult is without a lot of people doing the same EPDs, you can't do benchmarking. So we're sort of at a loss of how we compare with each other. The more companies that do at least life cycle assessment, if not EPD, then we can look at benchmarking. And it was interesting that Tobias, his report, answered some of the questions that I had as well, which was, well, what does this mean? Where do we put the focus? How do we present the information? And then along comes Tobias, and he's got the solutions there. So it all links up at the end.
Well, it's all part of our grand plan.
Yeah.
So other tools are available, Tabitha, of course. So we have done a webinar which describes a range of other tools that are available. Jane, have you got any final comments on that? No?
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, any final comments?
No, sorry.
Okay. I know Jane was typing and trying to speak at the same time. So we've got just a question coming in from Elizabeth. which Jane has responded to. We've run 5 minutes over time, so I've got another 5 minutes. Perhaps we can hang on, but it's been a very, very useful session. And I'd like to say thank you to all of our speakers. Are there any final questions before we let everybody go? And oh, it's good to see you all. It's been a really, really interesting session. This is quite a journey, I think, on EPD. It's not something that I think we're not going to become experts on EPD overnight. It is a learning journey for all of us, and so I'm pleased to be part of that learning journey. Hi, Chris.
Hello. I was here. Just keeping very still.
Yeah, no, I knew you weren't having a good snooze or anything. So thank you so much to all of our fantastic speakers. I really enjoyed your presentations, really excellent stuff. I'm sorry we've gone slightly over time, but that just shows the sort of level of complexity, I think, of the subject. Thanks to Richard for sorting everything out. Jane's got one final comment. Yeah, Jane.
Can I just ask whether people would be interested if we turned some of this into another briefing paper? Would that be useful? Thumbs
up from Tabitha. So I think that's a great idea, Jane. I don't know why I didn't think of it.
Oh, right.
But that's, yeah. So fantastic idea. Thank you. We'll have a look at that. So, all right, everybody. Thanks ever so much for your kind attention. We look forward to seeing you in a fortnight on Lca and Benchmarking. And then in 3 weeks, we've got our Healthy Buildings sponsored by Velux. So join us for either of those or both of those events. So thank you, everybody, and have a great afternoon. All right, cheerio.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye.